Good afternoon, good evening, and then good morning for all our friends in the Americas as well. And welcome to the fourth Climate Cast from the Climate Cocktail Club, focusing on the regenerative generation this evening. I'm very pleased to welcome three fabulous speakers that we have to join us to talk about this topic, Clare, Mick, and Arizona. We've got an hour's session to really get to grips with this, and in true Climate Cocktail Club style, we're going to start lightheartedly by making a cocktail, this time based on organic carrots from my local neighbor. A huge thanks to all our partners and supporters for this event, including Natural Capital Partners, who is our global climate partner. Without this, we would not be able to run the Climate Cocktail Club and these casts. So today's session itself, just to give you a bit of a run through about what we're focusing on. So, in a world where we're hearing a lot about extinction and crisis, we really need to understand how we can make roots to our natural world and connect. And one of those ways is through the purchasing choices that we make through our food, our fashion, and cosmetics. And with that, all of those products have an impact on our natural world, and they come from agricultural supply chains, and they come from areas where we see different negative as well as positive impacts that are happening. And our session today is to explore agriculture from a regenerative perspective. And we're looking at three key topics that we're going to introduce in a second. But first of all, I'm just going to move over to the cocktail, and hopefully this all works perfectly and well live. So for all of you that have your ingredients ready or your own pre-made cocktail, here we go. So hopefully that's changed over. So we're doing a carrot and stick margarita this evening. So that's to focus on the fact that we can produce lots of our own ingredients locally. I've got to say it is a margarita, so I am including lime, which is not grown in County Laois in Ireland, unfortunately, just yet. Maybe I need to build a greenhouse for that to happen. So we're just going to put some ice into the glass. I've got some of my freshly blitzed up carrot juice that I'm going to be putting in there. I'm putting a little bit of Angostura bitters in there just to bring out the flavor. And that's a bit of a personal preference for me. I like quite a lot of that. And then some local honey. So this is from Stradbally in County Laois, where I'm based, from the local farmer. I'm going to get some lime in there. I like my drinks pretty sour, but I'm going to make this one fairly balanced just for it to work properly. So squeezing two of my lime halves into there. That's probably sprayed everywhere on my working desk. As it's done, the second one is going to go in there as well. Smash that in. I'd probably normally put another half in there just to really give a kick to the sour. Like I say, I'm not going to do that this time. A dash of tequila. So I picked this up, I realized now, about 5 years ago, and it is one straight from Mexico itself. You can see the brand there for what you're doing. And now I'm just going to prepare the glass. So I'm going to take a lime wedge just around the edge just to wet the glass. And then I've got some wonderful molten sea salt flakes here. I'm just going to get that around the glass just to dress it and have a nice salt rim on that. We're ready to rock with that one. Hot pink shaker. Give it all its glory. Great Tom Cruise in the background, I've got to say. You can't see that. Smells amazing. And then let's just get the glass ready with some ice, a little bit more in there. And then we're going to strain and sieve just to serve up there, just so it's not just huge chunks for my pulped up carrot. And that is a fiery start to this evening, because I can already smell the tequila coming through. And here's my stick. There's the carrot, the incentives that we think about for climate change and innovation. And there's the stick, my dash of rosemary. So there we go, everybody. That's your carrot and stick.
That looks so pretty, Tom. Beautiful.
I'm going to taste it now just to be sure what it looks like. So cheers, everybody. Welcome to the Climate Cast.
I'm going to have a beer with you as soon as I can open it. I just don't have a beer opener near me, unfortunately. Underprepared.
I won't recommend using your teeth. So look, with that, thanks everybody for joining. We're well oiled. We're 5 minutes in. It's perfect. Probably after the next 30 minutes, as I sink through this cocktail, our chat is going to be a little bit more fluid. So please join the conversation. Follow us on Twitter. And comment, post there. We also have a competition running. If any of you have produced your own homegrown goodies, your vegetables, your fruit, or whatever, please post that with an image on LinkedIn. You could be in for a prize there from GIY as well. And then follow us and subscribe on all the channels just to help increase the voice and the reach of the Climate Cocktail Club and our Climate Cast as it stands. So we're going to kick off, and I just want to introduce first Arizona, because the theme of today actually was born out of a conversation that we had around really what she's passionate about, and it is about regenerative and restorative agriculture, which originally kind of partly surprised me because it's a fairly niche topic, and it's one that isn't really discussed as much as it should be. So I was very warmly receptive of that and wanted to take that forward. So Arizona, and the floor is yours. For everybody who doesn't know you, please introduce yourself, and then please provide us a bit of a context to why this topic is important for you.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I love the Climate Cocktail Club a lot because of its name. I think it's an ingenious name. I'm so happy to meet you, the ingenious man behind it. I am a model and, as it says, sustainability consultant. That's relatively new. I've been a model for 10 years and a sustainability consultant for less than a year. I've been an activist for about 4 years now. And what brought me into activism from modeling through modeling is that I began to realize I didn't know where the clothes were coming from. And I was working in these clothes every day at work, putting them on, part of selling them out into the world. And I had no idea what that meant. And so I went on this journey, this learning journey of sustainability and what is cotton? What impacts does that have on the environment? And then I learned about all the innovative materials and how things can be made. Fabrics could be made from seaweed or from milk or from all these crazy materials that you would never associate with a t-shirt. And that's been really a cool journey. And I do invite everyone who's not on it yet, get on that sustainability bandwagon. It's so much fun. It's enriched my life. It's just, I have the most amazing conversations now compared to when I led a less sustainable life. I've made as many little changes in my life as I can, which feels empowering rather than too big and too grand. The problem seems to get smaller as you make incremental changes in your own life. And that's one of the most amazing things that I've realized on this journey. Through my sustainability understanding and research personally, realized that fashion and agriculture are so closely joined because most of fashion is in fact grown in soil. And I hadn't put that together until I looked much more deeply into the fashion supply chain. Then I went to volunteer on farms, and I found that I'm really passionate about biodynamic agriculture, really, really passionate about it. Absolutely love it. Take my children there to volunteer on farms, get to know the farmers. These farmers are the most exceptional human beings. It's another level of being human, these farmers. Their capacity for observance and their insight, their awareness, their wisdom, their intelligence. I'm just so humbled to meet them and spend time with them. And it makes me realize that we could all be like that. It's the practice of the farming that has enriched these people so much so. So that's a rather long-winded introduction. I also live in London. I have 2 kids who are 11 and 2. And I love what I'm doing now, which is raising awareness and also helping fashion brands to transition into being part of the regenerative future of fashion, which I do see is possible. Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much, Arizona. I think there was probably some interference on the internet on your side that kind of led to a bit of a broken, fragmented. But what I will add, if you could, if it's possible, just drop out and drop back in again, and we'll pull you back in. But just to kind of do that, if that's okay. Just as we kick off further, I'm going to pass the buck now to Mick, if that's okay. Maybe every time we've spoken, I open up and say how important I think DIY is and how it relates to how I feel. But again, I think this is because I live in the country and I've got a veg patch, and I work with my neighbor who's got this little organic small holding, and I see what you guys do here in Ireland, and I see it on the TV as well. But for lots of people, this is new. So give us a bit of an introduction to yourself and set the scene for us, please, Mick.
Yeah, so thanks a million. So good to be here and to meet you guys. And I'm hoping that the internet here is going to hold up for me over the next while. It can be a bit dodgy at times, but yeah. So I founded and I run an organization called GIY. And basically, what we try and do is get people to grow their own food. And really, what we feel is that food growing is one of the best ways, if not the best way, for people to really connect back to food again and to learn more about food. And ultimately, I think the insight we have, which is what we were sort of founded on, is that when people grow their own food, they just, it's like a light bulb goes off, and they start to think completely differently about all aspects of their food lives, and ultimately it makes them more sustainable. I suppose just to give you a little bit about a bit of backstory, I'm sort of the least likely person. Well, possibly Arizona is equally unlikely to be doing this, but I'm just as unlikely in the sense that I worked in IT for 10 years, and I guess in my mid-30s, I was sort of like most people of that age. I was kind of like, I was into food, but didn't really think much about where my food came from. And I had a kind of a genuine road to Damascus moment in a supermarket one night, running around, throwing stuff into the trolley. And some garlic I was about to buy, I noticed on the label, the little 3 bulbs of garlic in a net or whatever. I was looking at that, and on the label it said product of China, or fresh from China, I think it said at the time, which was caught my imagination. The fact that it was something so cheap and so small, had traveled so far across the globe to be for sale for whatever it was at the time. I think it was pre-euro, so it was probably like 50 pence or something. And that just brought me down the rabbit hole of the sort of just how nonsensical the food system can be at times. And my reaction, which is interesting to me in hindsight, because at the time I had no green fingers. I'd killed houseplants and bonsai trees and all of that over the years, but basically decided to grow my own garlic or to give it a try. And I hadn't a clue what I was doing. I planted half of them upside down because I wasn't sure, does which end goes up, in the soil, but managed to grow some garlic successfully. And it was like my, I think of it like my Tom Hanks moment from that movie Castaway, where he manages to light fire on the beach, and he's running around like bare. That
Thanks, Mick. Yeah, I think it's my internet connection is having a few issues here. So technical problems in the deepest, darkest rural island. So joys, because it worked perfectly before. But thanks a mil, Mick, for that perspective. And I think for a lot of people, what DIY is doing is bringing this, that way of thinking really to their doorsteps, to their minds, and making it tangible for them. And we'll explore that a little bit later on. And finally, last but not least, I'd like to introduce Clare from the Soil Association, please.
Hi. So yeah, I'm Clare McDermott, and I work for Soil Association Certification, which is part of the Soil Association charity here in the UK. And I guess I'm coming to this talk from that sort of bigger perspective in a way, because the Soil Association campaigns and lobbies for fairer and more environmentally friendly food, farming, and land use. And our big vision is to restore nature, health, and a safe climate. And that incorporates all the things that Mick and Arizona are talking about, because they're all important parts of that. Because that's really a huge goal. And what I do is work with the businesses, the farmers, the producers, so they can be tiny or they can be large, who try to do this through how they produce their food, their beauty products, or their textile products and fashion, and supporting them to certify to organic standards, but also then leading best practice and helping to get the message out there to people about what organic actually is and what it means for climate, nature, and health. So there's plenty of farmers and also producers who are now more than ever producing things in an environmentally friendly way. And many of them use the principles of organic to do that, but they might not certify. And that is a really good thing. And that's something that we support, because we support the development of what we would call agroecological approaches, which is producing things in an environmentally nature-friendly way. And that hiring of standards across the board, so trying to lift up the worst produced and celebrating the best produced. What organic has, for anyone that's not familiar with it, is a set of standards. And those are legal standards for food and drink. So it's a way to know what it is that you're buying, and that it's really met those standards. Or for producers, it's the things they have to achieve, and the way they must farm or process what they're doing. And I guess the big question for everybody on here is, do organic standards guarantee better soil health, more wildlife, for example? Do they help with those big goals of what we could do around the climate crisis? So what the standards do is say what you can and can't do. So, for example, they restrict the amount of pesticides that a farmer might use, be that growing cotton, be that growing carrots, for example, two things we're talking about today. And they say no to things like artificial fertilizers or artificial additives. And in doing so, that leads to big outcomes, like 50% more wildlife on organic farms, and you get more carbon sequestered in organic soils. So, fascinating fact number one: organic farmland farmland stores on average 3.5 tons extra carbon for every hectare. So that's nearly the size, a hectare, of 2 football pitches. And that's actually the greenhouse gas equivalent of driving your car around the world almost 1.5 times. So you can make big changes through choosing simple things like how you choose to shop, eat, buy across there. And the title of the session today is about regenerative. And many people now are becoming more and more aware about regenerative approaches, and something as well called regenerative organic. What's the difference? Well, organic by its nature is a best-in-class example of regenerative agriculture, because regenerative agriculture is about farming in an agroecological, that big word again, or environmentally focused way. But what it does when you think about it as regenerative, and what organic does as well, it goes beyond saying what you shouldn't use, the pesticides, or you can't use these fertilizers. And it talks about the outcomes like biodiversity and soil health that you're aiming for. And it also talks about fairer trading practices, something that's really important with the pandemic that's been happening, particularly in the fashion chains, for example. So, in a pitch bit here, in choosing organic products, you're effectively choosing a regenerative product, because the organic system is exactly that, a system that works in harmony with nature. And I found a really nice quote, which I'll just read out to you before I move on and back to everybody else coming in on the questions, which was about what is organic. So organic agriculture is a production system that sustains the health of soils, ecosystems, and people. It relies on ecological processes, biodiversity, and cycles adapted to local conditions, rather than the use of inputs with adverse effects. Organic agriculture combines tradition, innovation, and science to benefit the shared environment and promote fair relationships and a good quality of life for all involved. And organic provides a solution not just to us choosing things, but also it's a solution to doing business sustainably. It's a good business solution. The organic market grew last year for the 8th year of consecutive growth, and it's now worth 2.5 billion in the UK, which is tiny compared to those of you that are in the USA, where it's 47 billion and is 6.6% of the market. But here, what's been really fascinating is that it's continued to grow through COVID and the lockdowns that we've had here, with almost 20% growth in the first 10 weeks of lockdown, which was miles ahead of other food and drink. And I know we all stocked up like on all our essentials, not to mention toilet roll. And more people are showing an awareness of where their food's coming from. Recent survey, a third of all millennials said actually the pandemic has made them more likely to buy organic and think and be more conscious about what they're choosing. And they're also prepared to pay a bit more for environmentally produced products, something we'll talk a bit about later on, I think. And one of the other things that soared, which as well as growing your own and people getting back to where actually what they can do with their food, is veg boxes. So actually buying from your local supplier, buying from the farm shop down the road, getting your veg box put there. They've soared through the pandemic and those sales have continued since that. And I guess just to round it off really, 42% of people in the UK actually feel that the crisis have made them value food more. So whilst the organic movement in the UK is 75 years old next year, its messages and practice couldn't be more of this moment for the regenerative generation. And yeah, that's what I try to do, to support that and help people understand what it's all about.
Fantastic, Claire. I think, certainly there's lots of things that people have reviewed through this crisis, through the pandemic. And I think closer to home here, we probably represent 20% of Ireland's organic sales in our house. We search for everything up and down to do that. And it's a good way to connect everybody. I did want to talk about that connection. And this kind of links, I guess, to the urgency around action that we've been speaking about. And it's a question to all of you, and we'll go one by one, but I really want to understand how you engage audiences around the urgency of action, each from your own different perspectives. So maybe to start off, pull Arizona in there, because you started us off. So, how do you engage your audiences around the urgency?
I love that you're asking this question first, because it is one of the first questions that I had to figure out at the beginning of my activism, because I became really passionate about learning and teaching myself things about sustainability, and I wasn't very vocal about it on my social media platforms at all at first, because first of all, I wanted to know it well before I talked about it. And second of all, I was just shy to bring it up, and I didn't really know what to talk about first or how to put my toe in the water, so to speak. And then when I would talk about something that was environmentally related, I would get about half the amount of likes on a photo that I posted on Instagram if it had an environmental lean or a caption about environmentalism. And that was really like off-putting and kind of, not an icky feeling, because it was A, what I was passionate about, B, what I felt like everyone really needs to learn about, and we need to raise awareness about it. And I was getting a really poor response from my following. And so then I tried different tactics, like talking about ocean wellness with a swimsuit picture. And even that didn't work at all, because normally swimsuit pictures get higher responses than clothing pictures. But that wasn't even the case. If I put a caption in about the ocean or plastic or whatever, it just, again, was like, oh, no one wants to hear about that. So that was frustrating at the beginning. And what I decided to do about that was to completely adopt an environmental and sustainability educational spin on my account. And so I just went full-blown environmental education platform. Every single post I do is now about my activism. And I said, you know what, if I lose a whole lot of followers, then so be it, because this is what I want to talk about. I actually don't like Instagram for any other purpose. And so I'm not being truthful to myself if I continue using this platform and trying to please, because that's a lot about what being a model is trying to please the client, trying to please your agent, trying to please everybody around you. And as a young person, I wasn't able to verbalize that when I was younger. And at the beginning of my career, it's really retrospect that's given me, as it always does, the insight and the words to describe something that was so unclear at the time. So I've done that, love it, have so much fun with Instagram now, talking about what I want to talk about. And now I'm really careful that the clothes I wear every day, whether or not I'm taking a picture of them, are not I sometimes don't have an entirely sustainable outfit on, but every day I have at least 1-2 things on me that are vintage, organic cotton, for some reason recycled metal jewelry I've recently really gotten into. And then when you start thinking about it and when you start paying real attention to it, it changes everything. Now I really don't need to buy anything that's not sustainable, because I know I really imagine how I'm going to feel when I wear it. I'll be like, yeah, well, there's no place to wear that, because I only wear things now that are really somewhat sustainable, or whole outfits that are somewhat sustainable. So that's my story with my activism and sharing this information and the urgency. And what happened to my following was interesting. I did lose quite a few followers, but to be honest, I didn't have a huge following anyway compared to my peers in modeling, because I joined Instagram very late and I really didn't take it up. I didn't like it very much. I would forget to post for weeks in a row, and Instagram loves people who post a lot. So it didn't love me at the beginning at all. And so that's been the journey. And now I feel very comfortable, and it's really not about how many people are following me. Although I do think it's stayed relatively even and grown slowly. I would love to have a spike in followers to prove that this is interesting and that this is like very important stuff to be talking about. But I'm doing it for myself now on Instagram. I love it. It's so much fun.
And do you come across in the day job people who think like this? Are you an anomaly still?
No, I'm definitely not an anomaly. There are more and more people in fashion who are thinking along these lines and self-educating, and I've now become really good friends with all the activists in the sustainable fashion industry, which is, I'll draw a point to that. Unfortunately, still, there are 2 fashion industries. One of them is the sustainable fashion industry, and the other one is the fashion industry. And I would love to see those 2 become the industry of fashion very, very soon, because that's not okay that we have one or the other. Customers should not have to choose between either fashion or sustainable fashion. Brands should not be profiting more if they're unsustainable. That it all just needs to be one. We have to all be sustainable so that we can all just call ourselves fashion.
Yeah, I totally agree. Thanks, Arizona. Mick, I want to pick up on from you, and actually we were cut off from your side when you were just telling the story of GIY. So if you can just complete that story for us, and then maybe just pick on that specific question around engagement on urgency, if you could.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess what happened next after my epiphany was to try and encourage other people to do the same, because I think I saw the impact that it had on my own relationship with food and how much more sustainable, even though I was only growing maybe 5% of my own food, it felt like the other 95% changed. And a lot later we coined the phrase food empathy in GIY to talk about, what happens when people grow their own food and the kind of the shift that happens for them. Because it completely changes how you think about, food waste and biodiversity and seasonality and, eating more plants, all of the things we know to be more sustainable. So I guess I wanted everybody to do it then. And I also wanted to learn, as evidenced by my garlic story early on. I didn't know what I was doing, and there was very little I could do. There seemed to be nothing out there I could join. So I set up GIY in 2008. Originally, it was about it was very much a grassroots movement where people were coming together in their community to help each other to grow food. But speaking to the urgency piece, I think very quickly I got frustrated at how slow that was. You know, even though there was maybe 100 DIY groups around Ireland, it just felt too slow and too small, given the urgency of the problem. So we started thinking about if we can prove, which we can, that food growers, as a result of their food growing, you know, eat more sustainably, then our job becomes helping people to do it successfully, for one, and then doing it at an unimaginable scale. So, you know, we started running national programs in Ireland, and you know, that had reached maybe 700,000 or 800,000 people. And then, you know, last year we decided, as a response to the UN, the decade of action around climate change, we said, look, if we can reach about 700,000 people a year at the moment, what can we do, you know, in a 10-year goal that will really stretch us and respond to that urgency? And so we set a goal of inspiring 100 million people around the world to grow some of their own food by 2030. And now the job becomes figuring out, you know, how to do that. And so I don't know if you want to get into that now, Tom, but I think that's the thing that keeps us awake at night, is trying to figure out how do you reach that volume of people and help them to grow their own food successfully. Because I think we can get to a tipping point of people who are more food empathetic and you know, understand that food.
Yeah. I was just going to jump in there, Mick, and just say that there was a recent article that I read where an Australian botanist had catalogued over the last 30 years every edible plant in every country in the world. It was an incredible number as a means to try and end malnutrition by offering communities the chance to source from their own garden, essentially. So your 100 million people, is as epic an ambition as that, but totally realistic if you think about the potential that's out. I just wanted to shift gears slightly and just move to a question for you, Claire, because you referenced this in your introduction, and it's kind of come up on the chat feed a little bit as well. And I'll give others a chance to respond to this. But you know, we talk about, people often see higher price for organic goods, or they believe, I think there's a bit of a misconception around higher priced for products that are more sustainable. And I would say that you guys in the Soil Association come across that a fair bit. So how do you address and tackle that? And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting question, and yes, in a way, environmentally friendly or goods produced, higher welfare meat, they can be a bit more expensive than what we might call conventionally produced goods, particularly at mass scale, particularly when you're looking at the supermarkets. But this takes us into a whole place about the true cost of food, because often the food that you see, so let's stick on the carrot theme that we had with the cocktail, will be on promotional pricing in the supermarket. Those 29p carrots, for example, is not what it costs to grow those 29p carrots. And so you are paying a bit more for the organic product because A, you're not putting a promotion on it, but B, also it may have been a bit more labour intensive to grow it because it might have been checked more often. There's more people working on it. You can achieve the same yield, but you're not constantly just putting it in the soil, taking it out the soil. You're not degrading the soil, so you're not paying a hidden cost in terms of what we do to the environment, which in the nature of the question sort of that also came up in the chat, well, that's all well and good if you can afford that, but there are quite a lot of organic products that actually don't cost any more when you're in the shop. And a lot of it is about some of the things that Mick's been talking about as well, about shopping seasonally, thinking seasonally, looking at what's there, and in which case it won't be more expensive. It will be a price that is much more comparable because it's in the season. People, I mean, some of it can sound quite basic, like meal planning, and thinking about what you're buying, less but better quality meat, if you eat meat, or dairy as well. A flip side of that, some things like dairy, because it's quite a big category, they tend to be similar pricing, so it's not too big a difference really as well. So there's lots of things that you can do, but it's worth remembering that when you do pay a little bit extra for something, be that your t-shirt or be that the pint of milk, actually what you're supporting is the farmer, you're supporting the ground, you're supporting the environment, the health of the planet, and hopefully your own health as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Fab. And I was going to pop this question. Go on, Mick. Yeah, fire away.
Just to say, I know Dan Barber talks about the carroty carrot, which is you know, the idea of like that 29-cent carrot, and when you grow food in living soil, I think it tastes completely different, particularly obviously when you grow it yourself, or if it's grown by a farmer who really understands and appreciates the soil. Like the most common kind of feedback we get from people is that I grew something myself and it tastes like food used to taste,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
We can kind of understand, you know, why that's actually happening. It's because the health of the soil has a direct correlation to the taste of the food and the nutrition as well. So if that, you know, sustainability and nutrition and taste align as three sort of corners of a pyramid, I think we've a chance to win consumers over to maybe paying a little bit more for the food.
Yeah. Arizona,
and let's also mention, I totally agree with everything. And let's also mention people who can afford it. If you have money, and you're so lucky that you do, you have a responsibility to spend it with farmers who are growing things in the right way and with fashion businesses who are making clothes in the right way. You do. So that's something I'd really like to say. And I know that's a bit bossy, but do it. It feels good. And let's not guilt anyone who's already struggling with financial pressures into also having the guilt that they're not buying the sustainable thing. You know, you do your thing, you do what you can, but there's a system in place that keeps people down. And it's not because they're dumber, it's not because they're less capable. We know that now. It's just a system that doesn't let everyone succeed. And that's a pretty sorry situation. So I would just say that to the people who can afford it, do it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And Tom, oh, sorry.
Go for it, yeah.
I was just going to add, actually, there's also a business responsibility in here as well at times. And some of the best businesses actually do take that initiative and source higher welfare or environmentally friendly products. And they just make that the default. I'm going to mention one that might provoke a reaction, but I'll do it anyway. In the UK, all McDonald's milk is organic. You don't have any choice.
Oh.
That's it. And therefore, that's the biggest user of organic milk in the UK. More people could do things like that.
Yeah, no, ditto that. And that's it. It's a great example. And I think that leads me on to my next thought of question, which is around scaling. So we've spoken a lot there about demand. I think that's what we're talking about. How do we engage and we create demand for these products and solutions? I think the other side then is, you know, how do we engage business to help scale and increase supply and get some of those efficiencies there? And I was going to point that question to you first, Claire, because you're very close to business. That's what you do. I mean, you engage with them around these topics. So talk to us a little bit about, I guess, what they have to, what they have to change, and what are some of the obstacles or challenges, and then the opportunities, right? If we're talking about scaling.
Yeah. So I think it's an interesting balance for business. I think many businesses want to do the right thing. And it's actually making that step and that commitment to do it. And a lot of people will say, oh, I won't do it until the customers want it or the customers demand it. But the customer there's an awful lot going on for them, isn't there? They're not going to know everything. So sometimes business has to step up and take a lead. And one of the things that we're involved in as a charity is a sustainable cotton initiative, which about 30 plus leading fashion retailers have signed up to the commitment to source more sustainable cotton. Now, organic's part of that, and it's a journey because it's not all organic, but they've at least made a commitment to start going on that journey. It might not be, and I've spoken with Arizona about this before, I think, that they're necessarily going far enough to start with, but at least it makes that commitment. And that's what people have to do, so that you're making the choice in a way to support the shopper in their choices, to support the citizen. There's lots of other things that can help scale it. And that's working. A lot comes from demand, but businesses actually been prepared to look at the ranges that they offer and think, okay, on this range, there's demand, and also I can move forward with that in my production, in the way that I farm. That's what I want to do. I feel I need to do the right thing. And then there's things that government can do to actually make that an awful lot easier. And that's one of the things that as a charity, again, we lobby for and we push for, because just coming back to the price of food, if you look at it compared to organic across Europe, actually UK farmers don't get as high a payment subsidy for their organic products as they would do in another European country. So you can put incentives in there in terms of those environmental payments that help to give that back. And we're at this really crucial moment in the UK now. We're about to leave the EU, and yet we're still working out what the scheme is that's going to reform our payments in terms of biodiversity, in terms of environmental benefits. So yeah, that's just some of the things really. If you can make it more of the norm, like say in Denmark, through public procurement, through government things. So public procurement, I mean in schools, in hospitals, they have a target in Denmark, 60% of all food in their schools is organic. I think you might also have a target in Ireland, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But that sort of thing helps make it the norm, and then businesses can all work to that. But I think businesses do have to take a step of faith, a step forward.
Yeah, Mick, can I pull you in there on that kind of question? You know, what's been the engagement from your side with with industry generally? I'd say, you know, talk
yeah, well, I think quite early on we kind of, because my background was business, Tom, we were very business friendly from day one. And I think what we realized is that as core policies. So we created a program where we could support their employees to grow their own food. We call it Grow Circle, and we basically run a program where we can provide products. So we sell these growing kits. We're a social enterprise, so I suppose everything we do, we're trying to create income and impact at the same time. And we send out these grow box kits to employees, and then support their learning around food growing with digital content, with videos and apps and things. And so that's been really successful. We've signed up companies like Facebook and Novartis and AIB here in Ireland. And for us, it's a route to scale. Again, it's about reaching as many people as we can. And companies really like it as a way to, to engage their employees in sustainability. But also at the moment, as our working worlds and lives have been turned upside down. And so it's a great way for companies to, during, while staff are remote working, to engage them, keep them engaged, and keep them, do something just really positive for them during a very bleak time as well. So that's been great for us. I suppose we kind of, again, speaking to that scale challenge, we see ourselves as kind of producers of content. So our TV series and our digital content, and use that as a kind of a top of the funnel approach, where we get as many people as we can into the top of the funnel, and support those people with programs that will help them to grow food successfully. that's the goal, and hopefully make it circular in the sense that the products that we sell will help them to grow really successfully, but they also generate income for us as a social enterprise. So that's the idea so far, anyway.
Yeah, great, Mick. Actually, there's there's an audience question which I'm going to put to you directly now, so I don't forget. And it's from Sheffield. I just thought it was a nice, fun one to put up. I studied in Sheffield too, so it's close to my heart. So give us a shout here, because our veg box from our neighbour is winding down as well. As we
it's a great question, isn't it? And I mean, funnily enough, Natalie will probably know this. Well, she won't know this part, but she'll know the challenges of supplying, the table right through the 12 months. So we have a food and beverage business here in Waterford called Grow HQ, which is kind of, I suppose, the home of the DIY movement. And we have a 65-seat cafe here, and so we grow the food for that cafe on a 3-acre site here in the city in Waterford. And the hungry gap, which lots of growers would be aware of, is that sort of gap, generally a kind of 2 to 3 month gap. It's much later than you'd think, actually. It's not generally a winter problem in this part of the world anyway. It's more a late spring problem. So it's, when your stores and preserves of food have run out, and you're waiting for the new season crops to come in. So our most challenging months actually here in Grow HQ are generally April and May, and that's when the stores are down to rock bottom, and we're trying to wait on the first big new season crops like peas and broad beans and fresh new season greens and so on are coming in. So it's a really challenging thing, and it starts to blur the lines, I think, between like what constitutes really fresh food. Is beetroot stored in a box of sand right through the winter for 6 months going to retain that nutrition I was talking about? The carroty carrot, is it still going to be a carroty carrot if you store it in cold storage for 6 months? And look, I think they're the discussions. That's the food empathy I'm talking about, where people start to understand that at growers, that food growing is vulnerable. It is sort of vulnerable to the weather, and it's vulnerable to, like, something getting in and eating your carrots in the box of sand or whatever. Like, it's not a straightforward process. And then here, we survive a lot. Our menu shifts to a lot of kale in April and May, kale sandwiches, and various other. It forces our kitchen team here to be incredibly creative and to make that last right through the year. And then we're back into hopefully the abundance of spring and summer, and into like where we are now, which is almost the super abundance, where we've got too much of everything.
Yeah, I must say we were inundated with kale, then cabbages, and then beetroot as it kind of came through the seasons. I made a beetroot cocktail for the last one, which was pretty mocktail, nice. At least, which was pretty,
I would say to Natalie, Tom, don't shy away from it. Don't shy away from that discussion, because that's the essence of food empathy. I think for people to understand that seasonality is such a huge learning.
Yeah. A question for you, Claire. It's kind of come up in the feed around McDonald's, but it's a question anyway beyond the McDonald's point that's kind of important, right? Because in a world with lots of labels and more to come, and more statements by brands themselves actually being restorative or regenerative or climate negative or climate positive, there's lots of things that are out there, and I think how do we help people understand the differences between them, and should we be making a difference between them?
Okay, so a couple of really good questions in there. The first one on labels and standards per se. God, it's confusing. I mean, anybody, when you go shopping, nobody loves having to go to the supermarket, hence more people starting to grow the veg box and things as well. But you spend about 40 seconds, I think, choosing what you're going to pick up each shelf, and you haven't got time to study all the labels. But flip back around to that again in a minute, because it is just really hard. Regenerative is a way of agroecological farming. Organic is an example of regenerative farming. That's the easiest way to think about it. It's probably if you wanted to, bit of an IKEA description, it's the best off-the-shelf example that there is at the moment, because it's got standards. Those standards, and every single person that has an organic label on their product has to be, in food and drink, inspected independently every year. So you know that those standards have been met. Now, what you don't know, which is sort of where regenerative focus is exactly how many bees or butterflies maybe those carrots have led to, or how much soil carbon. But organic in its own way, that's what organic producers do, that they farm that way because you get those benefits out the end of it. There's potentially, and I know it's coming through across in the States especially, there's a standard called Regenerative Organic Certification. And some of that is different countries across the world do have slightly different standards. The organic standards in the USA aren't the same as the UK organic standards, which is one of the sort of big issues around at the moment. And I would say that soil association standards in particular are significantly higher. And we always work with our producers and with our farmers to always go beyond the standards and make sure that it's progressing all the time as well. I think that's what the big difference is. So in answer to sort of the other part of the question about what standard to look for, they do all stand for different things. If I was saying it, I'd say the simplest thing to do is look for something that's got an organic certification on it, because you absolutely know what you're getting and you know that it's been independently inspected and audited. Tom's on mute.
Sorry, I was sipping my cocktail before. I didn't want you to hear the clinks of ice as I was. Damn it, it's delicious, by the way. I had no idea it would be that tasty. Recommend everybody to make it. You know, I was just thinking. We went through this experience with one of our brands in the day job. It was a tea company, and you know, what do people really look for when they're at the shelf? And there's a segment that look for the sales price, and it's on discount, and we're going to go for that because it's what it is. And there's others that actually do spend that time and think differently. And we've spoken a lot about food here, but I want to bring back in Arizona, because you know, agriculture, as you put in your introduction, is about fashion, yeah, and it's about cosmetics. You know, this is what it's linked to as well. So, you know, we're talking a lot about buying decisions and the way we think about scaling action in food, but what about those other industries, Arizona? Like, what are your thoughts there? How we can scale action?
I'll give a few helpful points about what you can do if you want to source better products across fashion and beauty. Definitely read the ingredients. It'll have an organic label on it. That is definitely the one I use to just know whether it's better. I get particularly excited when I see a Demeter sign, which is so unusual. Demeter is the certifying body for biodynamics, which is a type of regenerative agriculture, but it's so few and far between at the moment because it's such a tiny movement that's growing. And this is the thing about all regenerative is so good. Organic is the most widely spread and the most widely known. So it's amazing. Like, just choose organic stuff. It's so good. And that's really important in beauty. But in beauty, often you choose an organic thing, but it still comes in plastic. And that plastic bottle had a paper box around it. And the paper box had a piece of clear plastic around it. And then you brought it home in a plastic shopping bag. And it's like, whoa. Okay, red light alarms. Maybe one good thing you did just was canceled out by all those other negative things. So not only should you read the label about the ingredients, but also just use your eyes and your common sense. How is this company putting their product out into the world? And you can ask questions. You can read label on the packaging. Everyone's excited when they've done a good thing, so they will tell you about it. If you don't see any good things written on a package, it means there's nothing good to be said about it. So if it's recycled packaging, it will definitely say on there, recycled packaging. It'll probably be quite big because they're so proud that they found the recycled plastic or the recycled paper. Difference between recycled and recyclable. Recyclable means that If you choose to, put it in the right bin, and if that bin gets eventually to a recycling facility, it will get recycled. It won't just get sorted out, because a lot of things aren't easy to recycle, so they get sorted out. I would say as a brand, that's not a good enough decision. You didn't go all the way. Please choose recycled content, meaning that someone else already used it once. Now you're using it. That means you're displacing the purchase of a new piece of plastic, which means the oil and gas industry was getting a message that they should produce less, possibly zero plastic. So really important to look at what's coming around your product as well, in beauty, but also in fashion. Talk to your brands. If you ordered something and it arrived, fast delivery, bad. Always choose the slower delivery. Please be patient. Then if it arrived in a lot of plastic and a lot of paper and a box and then a second box, that's your moment to get on there on the customer page and go, excuse me, hello, I just bought from you. Happy customer, but please will you consider having lower packaging? I find right now 2020 is way too advanced to be still using plastic packaging. As a responsible citizen, it really harms me to know that I've purchased something that is having a negative impact on the earth. Go all the way, say all that. It really, really works. They need to hear their customers demanding their change, because unfortunately they are sometimes just waiting around for that. And it seems like customers are going to be able to demand change right now. Governments, on the other hand, who I would love to see putting bans on certain chemicals, really increasing the guidelines on packaging, and it's just so slow. It's too slow. 2020 is ridiculous that we still are using, we're still allowed to use whatever kind of packaging we want. You can still buy, although I heard that just last week, the UK government said no more plastic straws. Originally, it was just a ban in restaurants, that restaurants were encouraged to not use plastic straws, but now actually grocery stores can't sell them either. So that's really good, but that's one tiny little thing. We have to do it all, and we have to do it now, because the climate is in complete crisis. We are past the turning point, and that's something that I think about every day. It fills me with a sense of urgency and a sense of I must take action now. I must tell my children why I'm taking action now, and it has to be now. I can't put it off until later. That's not fair, and it's not even possible anymore.
Yeah, absolutely, Arizona. It's interesting. I was traveling through an airport, if you remember one of those things, for work, and they force you through the duty-free sections now, so you just consume. But I was going by, and there was this cosmetic brand, and it was promoting itself as being 96% natural, and I was like, okay, this is curious. I just thought I'd have a look because I'm interested in that type of thing. Not the face mask, just the product. And I looked at it, and I saw the ingredients. The main ingredient was water. So, you know, the 96%, I wonder how much of those ingredients are actually natural. And I looked, there's all these different kind of chemical things on the trail end of the ingredients. And like, well, that's the 4%, right? So actually it's nothing. You've decided just to rebrand and remessage your product to link it to being more natural.
Also, let's remind ourselves that oil and gas are natural. So natural isn't always good.
True. Yeah, exactly. Guys, look, we're out of time. I want to thank you all, like, for your thoughts and perspectives. You know, as we've gone through this session, we've really kind of kicked about lots of different elements that kind of connect together. I would say, you know, for the audience as it is, you know, we've got the audience that has followed through, and it's been lots of fun comments that have come through. We haven't posted up, but maybe we'll just put up one, Beth, if you can, the last one from Natalie Hunt about Greta. I just thought that was quite a funny one, just to end with, if we can. But you know, this is the kind of engagement. This is just quite fun, and thinking about the audience that we have here. So thanks a million. This will live live on YouTube, so people can follow up and record it, and then we'll be following up in email as well with a reading list. So I'll be prompting all three of you to provide us with interesting articles, and I would say there's already one from Clare and the team around pesticides and fertilizers and inputs, with a wonderful word cocktail in it. And just a thanks again to Natural Capital Partners for supporting us through this process and throughout. So thank you all. Mick, Arizona, and Claire, and the audience, and your questions and your comments. It's absolutely awesome. Thanks a million, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.